Right now, Russia is losing fuel, allies and control. Ukrainian drones just crippled one of the Kremlin's biggest oil plants, cutting off fuel to the army. At the same time, more NATO countries are joining the front lines of defense. Spain, UK, Italy and Sweden have stepped in. Norway is sending $1 billion to Ukraine for drones, Patriots and soldier training. And as Putin keeps flying drones into NATO airspace, Zelensky says only strength will stop him. This is happening now. The war is shifting. Welcome to Ukraine Today. I'm Zaroslava Kolesnikova, and right now Russia is losing fuel, allies and control. Ukrainian drones shut down Russia's largest oil plant fuel supply to army hit. One of Russia's biggest oil refineries, Crippled. After a powerful Ukrainian drone strike, the Kishirsky refinery in Leningrad region has slatted output. Reports say nearly 40% of its capacity is offline after the fire. This plant fueled the Russian military and now it's burning. How Ukraine is striking at the heart of Putin's war machine. Full breakdown in report.
On the night of September 16th, the Special Operations Forces of the Ukrainian Armed Forces struck the Saratov oil refinery, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. The facility produces more than 20 types of petroleum products. In 2023, the processing volume amounted to 4,800,000 tons. The strike on the Saratov oil refinery is a blow to the fuel supply of the Russian army, the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces emphasized.
The Saratov oil refinery specializes in the production of gasoline, diesel fuel, fuel oil, as well as various grades of bitumen, vacuum gas oil, technical sulfur and so on. The facility is involved in meeting the needs of the Russian armed forces. From the statement of the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces on Telegram.
Since the beginning of September, the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces and the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine have reported at least 5 strikes on oil refineries in the aggressor country. One of the most significant recent attacks was the strike on the Kryvyi oil refinery in the Leningrad region, which was hit by Ukrainian defense forces on the night of September 14th.
The Kryvyi oil refinery is one of the largest oil refineries in Russia. This facility produces about 80 types of petroleum products, including automotive gasoline, diesel, aviation fuel, and so on, and is involved in meeting the needs of the Russian armed forces. From a statement by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Telegram.
Since the beginning of August, Ukrainian defense forces have managed to strike more than 12.5 oil refineries on the territory of the aggressor country. There are a total of 36 oil refineries in the federation, through which up to 6 million barrels of oil passed daily. According to the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, Russia's capacity has now been reduced by 1,200,000 barrels per day. And since the Kremlin's priority remains continuing the war against Ukraine, which means supplying the army, the fuel shortage is felt most acutely in the civilian sector. In the territories occupied by Russia and in many Russian regions, buying gasoline is extremely difficult. There are kilometer-long lines at gas stations, and local authorities are imposing restrictions on fuel sales. On August 27th, the Russian government extended the complete ban on gasoline exports for all market participants, until September 30th for oil refineries, and until the end of October for other exporters.
A huge amount of oil, which in the form of diesel fuel and various grades of gasoline, will not reach not only civilian consumers in the Russian Federation, but also accordingly the Russian army. Although the situation is a little better for the Russian army, as they say, the night is still young and more is yet to come, because everything that is not reaching civilians today and will not reach them in the future is now being entirely directed to supply the Russian army. Obviously, this is the priority.
According to Bloomberg, the gasoline shortage, which first made itself felt in remote regions of Russia and in the territories of Ukraine occupied by the Russian army, may soon affect the capital region as well. And wholesale prices on the Spinks commodity exchange are hitting record highs. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine has assured that strikes on Russian oil refineries will continue.
The specifics of Russia's refining process are such that about 2/3 is diesel and 1/3 is gasoline. There is still enough diesel for now, because it is produced in this proportion. But I still hope that the predictions made last year that sooner or later constant strikes on the oil and gas sector will lead to the collapse of the system will come true, because the Russians have nowhere to store oil, and as a result, they will be forced to shut down their wells. And shutting down wells is permanent.
As a result of Ukrainian drone attacks on Russian oil refineries, equipment capable of processing about 250,000 barrels of oil per day has been taken out of operation, according to calculations by the International Energy Agency. This has led to crude oil processing volumes dropping to their lowest level since 2022. Andriy Dimitrenko for Freedom TV channel.
Spain, UK, Italy join NATO Eastern Sentinel, Russia warned. For more NATO countries, Spain, Italy, the UK and Sweden have officially joined the Eastern Sentinel initiative, a major collective defense effort to reinforce the alliance's eastern flank. They joined Denmark, Germany, France and Czech Republic in preparing for potential threats from Russia. NATO's Eastern Shield is growing stronger and the message to Moscow is loud and clear. But what exactly is the Eastern Sentinel? Why is this wave of support arriving now? And will it be enough to deter Russia from testing NATO again? Answer in report.
Spain, Italy, the United Kingdom and Sweden have announced their participation in NATO's Eastern Sentinel initiative, which already includes Denmark, Germany, France and the Czech Republic.
This means that within NATO there will be a separate program that will be supported by NATO countries both financially and organizationally, taking into account the threats currently posed by the Russian Federation.
All of this is happening as a result of an incident in which dozens of Russian drones violated Polish airspace.
Russia's reckless behavior is extremely dangerous. Russia has violated NATO airspace. That is why we must clearly demonstrate our resolve and our ability to defend our territory. This is precisely the purpose of Operation Eastern Sentinel.
The accession of new countries to Eastern Sentinel is certainly a good thing, but the question arises, is this merely a political signal or a real strengthening of NATO's military capabilities?
It is a political signal that at least the European part of NATO is united and ready to respond in a coordinated manner to military threats from the Russian Federation and beyond. But on the other hand, as I mentioned earlier, this presents a very real opportunity, given all the significant dangers coming from the Russian Federation, to experience modern warfare and to be fully prepared for it.
Despite many years of a cautious approach and limited actions, NATO is now demonstrating a willingness to act more decisively. And most importantly, Ukraine can help with this.
That is why anti-drone production will now be scaled up on the territory of Ukraine, and joint programs between countries, both within the European Union and NATO separately, are starting to operate more effectively. Yes, within the framework of the Eastern Sentinel initiative, so that relevant training for personnel can be conducted in Ukraine and production can be scaled up as well. And let's put it this way, the NATO border, the eastern border of NATO Poland, would be maximally protected.
Such decisive actions by NATO also have certain positive aspects for Ukraine.
Indeed, the Poles realized the real danger coming from the Russian Federation and focused on cooperating specifically with Ukraine to counter these threats, because the threats from the Russian Federation to Poland, Ukraine, NATO, and the European Union are absolutely the same. And the more synchronized our responses are, the more we are jointly prepared to respond to the Russian threat, the greater and stronger European security will be.
Nevertheless, while in Russia they claim that no one ever planned aggression against Poland, everyone in the country understands perfectly well.
We don't believe in 20 mistakes in one night.
But now Russian drones are definitely being expected in Poland. But will the Kremlin dare to repeat the provocation by sending its UAVs into NATO countries?
The Russian Federation, you could say, has achieved its goals. It has opened up a horizon of opportunities for itself and essentially has lowered that very pain threshold and the ability to perceive certain actions within the country that were previously, yes, interpreted as escalatory, well, now they're seen as below the threshold. That's why I think that going forward, the Russian Federation will continue such incursions.
Nevertheless, the Kremlin just can't seem to calm down. Now they're threatening Poland with partition because of its statement about creating a no-fly zone over Ukraine. They even managed to draw a map. And even after all this, the Kremlin doesn't stop its threats and provocations.
It's quite possible that now Russia will scale down such actions, but shift to the political and diplomatic arena. So what has Russia demonstrated? Russia has shown, essentially, it drove a wedge between Europe and the United States and tested NATO's security. It performed rather poorly, yes, and it's still not entirely clear whether the United States is ready to invoke Article 5 if necessary.
On September 14th, the president of Poland also signed a resolution approving the presence of foreign troops from NATO member states in the country.
Norway gives $8.5 billion to Ukraine. Drones, Patriot and training include. The Scandinavian front is solid. Norway has pledged nearly $8.5 billion in aid to Ukraine for 2025 and 2026. This includes $700 million for Patriot air defense system, $640 million for drone technologies and critical training for Ukrainian troops. Also, it's not just sending money, it's actively helping protect Ukrainian skies and shape the future battlefields.
The Scandinavian countries stand with Ukraine. Throughout the current year, 2025, and into the next 2026, Norway will allocate nearly $8.5 billion to our country. Norwegians also plan to train Ukrainian military personnel and participate in the defense of Ukraine's airspace, allocating nearly $700 million for the purchase of Patriot air defense systems. Norway will also provide Ukraine with support in the form of drones and drone technologies worth another $640 million.
Each of the Scandinavian countries has its own unique feature. But the most important thing they share is their faith in Ukraine, their sincere assistance, and, as is clear today, their use of every possible method, form, and format to help Ukraine.
President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky noted that Norway has extensive experience in protecting its coastline and sea, which enables it to help Ukraine. Denmark has passed a new law that will allow the country's government to bypass more than 20 laws and regulations in order to speed up the construction of national defense facilities. Among them is the Ukrainian company Firepoint, which manufactures Flamingo missiles.
From the very first day of the full-scale invasion by the Russian Federation, they have supported Ukraine. Moreover, it's not just about funding certain programs, it's also about initiatives that, at this time, primarily help our military-industrial complex to develop and to achieve new projects. This is investment in our military-industrial complex, and it also includes the implementation of innovations. Well, for example, everyone is familiar with the Danish formula. The money is being invested specifically in Ukraine's military-industrial complex. And in fact, this Danish formula was the first of its kind in this regard. And now, following this Danish formula, which, let me remind you once again, is the name it goes by today, many countries have also started working together with Ukraine, building military factories, setting up enterprises, involving Ukrainian scientists, engineers, developers, and engaging our citizens to work at these facilities.
Sweden will provide Ukraine with a new 20th aid package worth $836 million. Among the weapons to be delivered are 18 new Archer systems as part of long-term programs, $3.6 billion annually in 2026 to 2027, and $900 million in civilian funding from 2026 to 2028.
Everything that concerns, for example, artillery is truly what affects the outcome of the battle. This is what helps in combat. This is what allows you to destroy not only enemy personnel, but also equipment. And the quality of Scandinavian weapons, especially such systems, is very well known to everyone.
Cooperation with Finland is important for Ukraine.
Take, for example, the president of Finland, Alexander Stubb. He's basically, probably our permanent representative in President Trump's administration. He has a good relationship, a friendly relationship with the occupant of the White House. And I think that many of the initiatives that have been successfully implemented in the very difficult dialogue between Ukraine and the United States are, above all, thanks to the president of Finland.
The Scandinavian countries are strong economies that, with each year of the war in Ukraine, are increasing their defense budgets more and more, including with the aim of helping our country. In this way, these countries are not only helping Ukraine, but also setting an example for defensive cooperation with our country.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now. Putin tastes NATO's nerve. Zelensky says only strength works. Putin keeps sending drones into NATO airspace and Zelensky says it's no accident. In an interview with Sky News, Ukrainian president warns the Kremlin is testing NATO politically and diplomatically. But the alliance is answering with strength, reinforcing its eastern flank and pouring in a new military funding. Is NATO ready to strike back if Putin crosses the line again? Find out in report.
NATO must be ready for war, said Polish President Karol Nawrocki in an interview with Bild. He emphasized that strengthening air defense is a key priority, and Ukraine's experience in repelling Russian drone attacks is invaluable for the entire alliance. Nawrocki added that there is no doubt that Russia deliberately attacked Poland with drones. At the same time, the Polish president suggested that there would be no more such attacks on NATO territory. We do not want war and we do not want aggression, just like all countries of the free world. Nevertheless, we are ready to defend our independence, and we have many tasks that need to be accomplished. We must develop our air defense systems, and Ukraine has the greatest experience in this area because it has been fighting this battle for several years already. We must implement the agreements we have signed. In 2026, we will have F-35 aircraft in Poland. Thus, every year we accomplish our objectives. And I want to emphasize once again that we are spending almost 5% of our GDP on armaments. In response to Russia's violation of Polish airspace, NATO launched Operation Eastern Shield. Denmark, France, Germany, the United Kingdom and other allies are participating in it. To protect the alliance's eastern flank, they are deploying air defense systems, helicopters and combat aircraft. London has already confirmed that, as part of the mission, Britain will deploy its Typhoon fighter jets. The United Kingdom's commitment to defending every inch of NATO allies' territory is unwavering. As part of Operation Eastern Shield, Royal Air Force Typhoon fighters will join the allies and carry out air defense missions over Poland. After Russia carried out a reckless and dangerous drone incursion into Polish territory last week, and following statements from the UK Ministry of Defence on social media platform X. Within NATO, allies are discussing the need to develop anti-drone technologies. Shooting down drones with expensive missiles is inefficient, the president of Latvia emphasized. Incidentally, Ukraine has already offered to share its experience in repelling Russian attacks with Poland. And Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has announced a meeting with the Ukrainian side to develop joint solutions for maximum protection against Russian drones.
A decision by NATO to strengthen the eastern flank is essential.
NATO's decision to deploy the Eastern Guard mission and to strengthen the air defense capabilities of the eastern flank is both appropriate and correct. However, we must learn from this situation that, at present, NATO countries still need to further develop their counter-drone systems. Usually, expensive missiles are not used to shoot down relatively cheap drones. Putin is testing NATO's resolve. It is for this very purpose that he is sending attack drones into the airspace of a NATO member state, according to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. In an interview with Sky News, he added that the Kremlin is trying to intimidate alliance countries so that they do not provide Kiev with additional air defense systems. He wants to test what NATO is prepared to do, what it is capable of both diplomatically and politically, and how the local population will react to this. In addition, in my opinion, another message the Russians are sending is this: don't you dare provide Ukraine with additional air defense systems because you might need them yourselves. Meanwhile, Kiev's Western partners continue to strengthen their defenses. For the first time since the Cold War, Sweden has announced a record increase in its military budget. As Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson reported, spending will increase by €2.4 billion, which means a jump of almost 18% from the current $13 billion. Nikita Skoblikov for Freedom TV channel.
That's all for today on Ukraine Today. If you believe the truth should be louder than propaganda, like, comment and subscribe. Want to do more? Become a sponsor and join our front line of information defense. Your support helps us expose war crimes, counter disinformation and amplify Ukrainians' voice worldwide. Stay strong, stay informed and stay with Ukraine.